And we are finally here to talk about the lunar nodes. So here's the video I've been promising to you, where we're going to be talking about the shift that's happened in the lunar nodes going from Aries and Libra to the Pisces-Virgo axis. So that shift has happened on the 12th of January, 2025. So I'm kind of overdue here. It's about 15 days or something. And this nodal position is going to stay until the 27th of July, 2026. So that is a flavor that we're going to be dealing with, that we're going to be experiencing collectively, individually, if we place that transit in our birth charts. So that's something that's really worth talking about because it's such a longer flavor, right? Now, as usual with my other, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but there's someone with loud music outside. There's always like this. If you guys do content, it's like the moment you start recording, someone shows up making a lot of noise. Anyhow, so this video is very similar to the videos in the past that I've made about the lunar nodes. So there are two videos I've done already. And they're all very, very much heavily inspired by the Astrology for the Soul by Jen Spiller, a book that I really highly recommend if you're interested in the nodes. It's very, very comprehensive, and I'm sure you're going to get some more insights other than the ones I share with you. Now, this video is meant to be long. It's not meant to be a 5-minute thing. I will put timestamps, however, so you can just explore different themes, do it your way, watch a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, or watch just a little bit if that's what you want. You're free. Here's a freedom token for you. So that will be timestamps organizing everything. I'm very much following the structure of Jen Spiller's book. So I think it works really well, her structure, and it helps my Virgo brain to talk about the subject as well. And that's it. So let's dive deeper into this subject. Now, if you have this nodal position natally, then that's very relevant to you. And I know that some people will ask about that, will write it in the comments and stuff. And that is very super important to you because what I'm talking about here will work for you for life, right? That's something that you're learning, that you're working with for life. It's not just until July next year. So for most of us that don't have that nodal position in the birth chart, this is something that we're dealing with until July 2026. All right. So we can brainstorm and shift our perspective slightly from the natal to transits, which means just a period of time, just a flavor that we're facing, that we're dealing with, and vice versa from the transit sort of flavor into the birth chart as something that we actually have as part of our essence, as part of who we are, right? That's what the birth chart is. So, first of all, I think that's a very important thing to get out of the way. The lunar nodes talk a lot about, and in my observation, they tend to be super important in the birth chart. They talk about spiritual growth. They're talking much more about a sense of involvement and real growth that goes beyond our ego, that goes beyond our sense of who we are, our sense of identity, which I think the personal planets can be talking about very strongly. So for that reason, I really think that as a transit, the lunar nodes will be talking about where the biggest opportunities are collectively to experience that sense of involvement, that sense of growth. All right. So North Node has a kind of a tendency, to reflect something that we're leaning more towards. We're learning how to deal with the lessons and the unknown is really reflected by the North Node, whereas where we've stayed perhaps a little too long will be connected to the South Node. So the South Node in evolutionary astrology is also where a lot of the stories, narratives of our past lives is also reflected. So South Node has a connection to past lives, the past in general. And I personally, as a psychological astrology or astrologer, much more than an evolutionary one, I tend to talk to my clients about their south node as a comfort zone, somewhere that they kind of overextend their times, staying there. It's like we're not growing there anymore. We're too used to that. We're overly confident about that area, and we're kind of, because it's an axis, we're leaning too much in there and we're missing out a little bit on the other side of the axis. We're missing out on learning the other side of how to do things. Another thing that comes to mind, which I think is really useful when we think about the lunar nodes, is to think about the axis of the signs in general, what they have in common, not only what they differ, but what they have in common as well. And to think about the signs as, there's a story that there was only 6 signs of the zodiac. So they're, connected. Pisces and Virgo was just one. And then they were separated into this opposite duality, right? But there is something of integrating that duality, which is really important. And I think that's where we want to go. That's where we want to get to. And like I said before, looking into birth charts, or when is a transit as well, which is what we're doing right now, the South Node, we're talking about something that we've done for so long that we tend to express the shadows of it a lot. Also, by transit, the South Node, we're talking about the potential to let go of those shadows. So the potential to let go of the shadow traits of Libra when we were experiencing the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra just recently. So now that's shifted into letting go of the shadows of Virgo and is stepping into the best of Pisces, developing the higher qualities of Pisces. So we're kind of experimenting, experiencing that together. And obviously you have that in your birth chart, then that's something that is going to be relevant throughout your life, not just now, but throughout your life. So that's kind of what I wanted to share for this quick introduction. I'm just trying to think if I'm forgetting anything, because I had a really great thought while I was my mind divides sometimes into different pathways at the same time, and sometimes I have is a challenge for me to follow it as well. Anyhow, so very important to keep that in mind. Letting go of the shadows of one end, stepping into the gifts of the other side. Oh, yeah, that's the thought I had. In particular, if that's a placement that you have in your birth chart, we're not saying let go of everything that's Virgo related, just forget it all about and go and plunge, take a plunge, dive into Pisces. I think the idea with the lunar nodes and the idea of the signs forming a totality, that the two opposites becoming one whole, right? Bringing that holistic perspective. We are, we are invited to bring the gifts of the South Node further or forward. So the gifts of that Virgo South Node, especially if you have that in your birth chart, is to be brought forward towards the Piscean direction, right? And that works with every pair of North Node and South Node as well. So that sense of bringing the gifts forward. And another thing I thought, just remembered my parallel thought and like insight as well that I had just before is please think about the lunar nodes. One idea I find really, really useful is to think about astrological transits in general, really, in general, anything, challenging aspects, flowing aspects, whatever it is, or planets and signs, etc. Is to think about it in terms of seasons, right? The seasons aren't intrinsically good, they're not intrinsically bad, they're different seasons. They have their role, they have their importance, their characteristics, and their opportunities as well, right? Winter will give us an opportunity to go inwards, to reflect, to rest, to go inwards. So there will be astrological seasons that will favor that as well. And I think the difference here is to find out what these seasons are and to reflect on what they mean to you as well, and obviously place them around your birth chart as well. And once you do that, then you can choose your clothing, and what you're wearing and where you're going as well. I mean, if you know there's going to be a huge thunderstorm, you're not going to choose to be somewhere unprotected and open air somewhere. Like you're going to choose to be somewhere that's going to be covered and indoors, etc. So I think symbolically when it comes to astrology as well. All right. I really, really want to encourage letting go of that good or bad sort of duality of like, oh, this is good, this is bad, and the simple way of reading astrology and to putting people in the box as well. Like, let's move on from that. Okay. With all of that said, let's move on from our introduction and start with the keywords, really. Some keywords, some key ideas, right? You're going to notice I'm looking down here, and that's because I'm old school. I write things down. I don't really, I don't rehearse, I don't have scripts, but I have things that I write down that I need to share with you so I can follow the chain of thought. So, attributes to develop versus attributes to let go of. So some of the things to develop here with the North Node in Pisces that works for all of us and for you with that lunar, that nodal position in your birth chart, that's for you for life. All right. So attributes to develop would be non-judgmental. So letting go of judgment. I think that's some wonderful advice anyways regarding of the lunar node placement. But being non-judgmental, developing compassion. That's a classic one. I already thought about that before, preparing this video as well. So having more compassion, surrendering anxiety to a higher power. I think that's a very Piscean flavor here, to stop overthinking. This is such a big one. And it was written all over the book. And it was really something that I thought as well very early when I started thinking about this nodal position, this transit that we're going through now, that we are invited to let go of anxiety. And surrendering it to a higher power is really, really helpful. Freeing the mind, that's another attribute to develop, and that will be through meditation, through self-reflection, through dance. That's another thing I can think, ecstatic dance and all the things that will help you to achieve a kind of a higher state of consciousness, will help you get into a sort of I have almost like a spiritual experience, right? So you're kind of in a heightened state. You can easily feel that we're all interconnected, and these things can happen through some of these activities. They can really induce those states. So freeing the mind is what Jen Spiller called it. And I would say spiritual experiences are very much connected with that process of freeing the mind. So dancing, meditation, self-reflection, music, playing something. I'm not much of a musician, unfortunately, because I love musicians and I love music, but I have learned how to play the ukulele for a while. I haven't played it in ages. But I used to play it and sing it really freely. I mean, I'm sorry, neighbors. But I used to do that, and it was amazing. When I really got into a place, it's hard to explain really with words. I think is a real is when you get to a certain state of when you do something and you overthink, you're gonna fall off, right? So you're trying to roller skate or you're trying to ski and if you think about what you're doing, you're bound to fall off or something, lose your balance. Or same with singing. If you're singing and you start thinking about what you're doing or that people might be listening to you, you lose your connection. You get out of tune very quickly. Or you lose the rhythm when you're playing an instrument as well. If you think, the moment you think and you say, oh my God, what am I doing? Or, oh my God, people are watching me, or that's when you lose it. And I think that's a great imagery here that encapsulates this idea of freeing the mind and really trying to be in the flow more, practicing being in the flow. I think that's something that we're all invited to do. And this is part of your life journey if you have that in your birth chart. So freeing the mind. Now focus on the spiritual as well. So thinking about the higher truth, the spiritual side of life, transcendence and things like that, really beyond the material reality. What are your beliefs? What would you like to believe in? Or what do you feel about those realities? How do you define it for yourself? But more than defining it in an analytical way, in an overthinking way, is really about feeling it and practicing it, perhaps. It's like that sort of that's perhaps where Virgo and Pisces can meet, as the daily habit, the daily practice of something. So focus on the spiritual, trusting positive outcomes. That's a great challenge for the next 18 months. Really trying to focus on positive outcomes. Stop trying to find the fault, to be, preparing yourself for what's going to go wrong and what could be and why you shouldn't trust. I think the challenge here is to trust the higher source. And that's one of the key elements, one of the key flavors of this nodal position with the North Node in Pisces. So it's really telling us, the North is to go towards that Piscean flavor and to experience and harvest the best fruits that Pisces can be about, that flavor of life can be about. And when it comes to tarot cards, we're really moving from the Hermit to the Moon, because the Moon card is the card of Pisces. And I'm trying to find, you see how everything is done in a moment here. I'm trying to find the Moon card here because I just wanted to show you. Okay, I found the Hermit. I just wanted to show you in my deck this flavor, because tarot cards, and this is what I love about astrological tarot cards that are powerful imagery, and they can really convey a flavor for us. So here we have the Moon card, which is where we headed towards. It's like trusting the intuition, heading towards the unknown, exploring the waters of the subconscious, trusting that process. How can we see when it's dark, right? The moon illuminates the darkness, right? It's not about the rational reasoning, which is the sun, right? The sun card and the sun, in the birth chart as well, represents that consciousness, the rational reasoning sort of faculties. And here is the Hermit card, which represents Virgo. So going from the Hermit, which is really connected with self-improvement, self-awareness as well, to a certain extent, is really looking within there. But I think one of the key things of the Hermit versus the Moon is letting go of the reasoning a little bit and heading towards the intuition a little bit more, leaning on intuition a little bit more, developing that faculty a little bit more, right? And in order to do that, we need to be willing to stop overthinking. Because when we overthink, that's when we can't hear the inner voice, right? So trusting positive outcomes, connection with the universe. That's another way to say, hey, let's focus on spirituality a little bit more the next 18 months, right? Focus on a spiritual connect with the universe, whatever you define as potentially, connection with the universe there. And the last one that she wrote here, which I think is really it's really wonderful. I mean, even though Virgo and Pisces are both um, mutable signs, so they're all connected with the change of seasons, Pisces is a lot more welcoming of change, whereas Virgo feels a little bit less inclined to embrace those changes, because we need to have, and I'm a Virgo, I can tell, hands down, I can say the darker sides of Virgo because I feel it. I've got 3 planets in Virgo. So the need to protect against chaos is very real in Virgo, and then, planets that are in Virgo will have those defense mechanisms. And so welcoming change is welcoming chaos as well, right? Because change is chaotic. It's not really necessarily very organized and controlled and quantified and analyzed, it's all of that needs to kind of be on standby for a bit, right? So welcoming change is part of the process, is part of the lessons of this year for all of us. Now, tendencies to let go of, right? We're talking about the shadow sides of Virgo, that we're leaving behind collectively. And again, if you have that in your birth chart, then that's your journey, that's your life journey, all right? So tendencies to let go, hyper anxiety, thinking and then thinking and then thinking. I think I've, again, having 3 planets in Virgo here, I have struggled in the past a lot with analysis of the analysis of the analysis, and it gets, really, really stifled in the head. And we forget to be in the moment. We forget to be in the present. We forget to trust where life is taking us, right? So hyper anxiety is a tendency to let go of. Whenever we're noticing that that's what we're doing, that's where we're going, then we take our deep breath in and a step back, right? And all of that doesn't have to be just you by yourself. You can have tools to help you, tools and techniques, and other people and things like that that can be helpful, a community of like-minded that are really interested in the mystical arts and will help you with that, or going for dance classes, or playing an instrument, etc., to counteract hyper anxiety. Now, obviously, I've already mentioned another tends to let go is over analysis. I just talked about it, right? Analyzing the analysis, like let go of that. Be in the present, trust what's happening, let go of over analyzing situations, people, decisions, etc. Obsessive worry is another one. Remember, we're talking about the shadows of Virgo here. So obsessive worry is another one. Exaggerating the importance of details. So details become massive when we have, that Virgoan energy. All we can see are the details of things. The tendency to want to improve things is so strong that we keep fault finding as well. I had a conversation with my partner once about that. Going to a restaurant and just have, oh, what do you think? And it's always like something to criticize and something to see that could be improved, could make better, etc. Is to let go of that now. Is to really embrace things the way they are. Embrace the totality of experience, right? Embrace the feelings of experience rather than these little details. Yeah, I think that's also represented by the hermit when it comes to that little light that's shown inside. And I think a connection to self-improvement, to analyzing things, to really looking within. I think the hermit is a very rational card compared to the moon. So it's to let go of that a little bit. Let go of critical first reactions. Again, I just mentioned it, my own story with the criticism, going to a restaurant, rather than enjoying the meal, enjoying the moment and the whole, I have to find something that's not working 100% and, love this, but there is this and that could be done differently, or, this is cold, or, the food took too long, or there's always something. So really, it's for us to practice letting go of that, embracing things as they are a little bit. I'm not saying get complacent and not improve your life, but the exaggeration of it, right? The extreme of the Virgoan shadows. That's what we're letting go of. Okay. So critical reactions, fault finding. There we go. I just talked about that. Gave you my little example of the restaurant. So definitely fault finding is a big one. It's all, no need to find the fault on things. Just go with the flow, just embrace the moment, etc. Another tendency to let go of here is excessive anxiety over making mistakes. That's a very interesting one, and we'll talk about that later. When she mentions past lives, and that's why the South Node in Virgo has a tendency to have an excessive worry over making mistakes. And believe me, I have worked as because we can all say that this is all a self-fulfilling prophecy, and when we read things about ourselves, we embrace it, we say that's exactly what we do and how we feel. But I have noticed and I have observed astrology in children because I've worked as a nanny for a few years, and the child that I looked after for a couple of years, and I looked after many, okay, not just one. But the one that I looked after that had the South Node in Virgo was very, very anxious. I could really see that playing out. And in particular, she had an excessive anxiety over making mistakes. She really didn't want to make mistakes. And that was really, very strongly marked. And when I read Jen Spiller's book, I was really like, wow, it makes sense. And actually, my mother also has the South Node in Virgo, and I see that very strongly in her as well. Let go of being Mrs. Perfect or Mr. Perfect. We don't want to be perfect. We want to embrace our imperfections during this 18 months as well, and see how that will bring us growth and how that's going to bring change as well in our life. And, some of these behaviors we might want to bring forward even after this nodal position has moved on. All right. But letting go of being the perfect person. And last but not least, letting go of inflexibility. So I think that comes with the embracing and welcoming change. So the opposite of that is the inflexibility of staying in unpleasant situations or not enjoying that job is horrible, is killing you, but you're staying there and you're staying there. So that South Node in Virgo is saying, hey, let go of that. Be a little bit more flexible. Welcome change. Sometimes you're staying in those situations because you're really afraid of what's going to happen and what's going to be the future. So we mix the inflexibility with the overanalysis, the obsessive worry, paying attention to details, and it get paralyzed, right? We get paralyzed. We don't make choices to embrace and welcome something new in our lives, because better to be somewhere that's bad, but we know, than something that we don't know about. And that's where surrendering to a higher power can be really helpful, and trusting that things are unfolding in the way that they're meant to. Just trust that, trust that. Okay, so this is the to develop and to let go portion of the video. Now, some of the traps to avoid here, and obviously that's a lot of the things that I already said, and you're gonna see how some of the messages are gonna get repeated throughout the video, even when I'm talking about different things. And I think that's because the important messages are always getting repeated. That's what I say to my students as well when they're like, how do I read this, astrological tarot spread? And there's so much information, so many cards, and so much information in the birth chart. And I always say, keep it simple. The important message will always get repeated. And it's the same with this video. There's going to be a kind of a heart of the matter that's going to be repeated in different ways here. So traps to avoid: a compulsive need for order. Again, defense mechanism against chaos, right? I'm a Virgo, I can tell you that. That's how I feel. That's a lot of the times what's happening within myself, in my head, in my daily routines and everything is a kind of a keeping chaos at bay so I can I can function. So this next 18 months is for us to really access and let go of any compulsive need for order, any search for perfection, and being able to relax as a result. So we're learning how to relax. We're learning how to go with the flow, right? Letting go of control, that's another one. I mean, Virgos can be very control freak. And, as much as it is a, earth sign, or it's all about service and etc., that's the highest potential for Virgo. But the fear of chaos is so strong that they try to control everything. There is a need to control, and people with a lot of Virgo energy can be a little bit of a control freak and not want to give other people the benefit of the doubt, or the situation the benefit of the doubt. They need to take control of what's happening. So letting go of control is an important one as well there, for this year, and for you to learn about that for life, perhaps. So we're learning about the larger picture. Forget about the details. Forget about worrying about the details, analyzing, thinking, overthinking about the details. Look at the bigger picture. Pisces is about the bigger picture. It's about the interconnection between everyone. Think about Pisces in connection to Neptune, in connection to the 12th house as well, and that sense of transcending boundaries, right? We're talking about the bigger picture, the much, much larger picture than the day-to-day nitty-gritty analysis of everything that's happening around us. So we're receiving an invitation to grow spiritually, to evolve collectively together through surrendering a little bit, through experiencing that potential for surrender, right? And we can do that by paying attention to the bigger picture, not the little details of everything. You see yourself looking at the little details, then remove yourself a little bit, yeah? Um, that's a very interesting one. I've seen people South Node in Virgo again and again doing this as well. And not even I do that with a Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Virgo. But here is a trap to avoid. Turn away from rigid physical and material planning. It's like I have a plan and I need to get there and I need to go through these exact steps. And if something doesn't go that way, then I'm freaking out. I'm obsessing, I'm over worrying, I'm over analyzing it, I'm really anxious. It's like trust that you will get there. And again, I'm not saying don't plan, don't take responsibility. You know, people that know me long enough, that have been following me or that have been in my classes and everything, you know that I'm very fond of Saturn and I'm very fond of personal accountability and responsibility. And we need to know what we want and work towards it, etc. But this year, with the North Node in Pisces, there is an invitation. Again, I love to think about these transits as an invitation. There is an invitation for us to get a little bit more trusting, to relax, let go a little bit more. So, you know, that tight grip on your plans and your sense of direction. And, you know, I'm 30, so I should be here. I'm 35, I should be there. And, you know, let go of that rigid idea of where you should be or how things should be or the plans that you've made and go a little bit with that flow. I think one of the imageries she uses and I really like is that we're going down a river on a little boat and we can steer the boat, but we're going down river. Yeah. So we can still have personal accountability, responsibility, and make choices, but we going down the river. We're not trying to go against the current. We're not trying to force things. That's kind of where, you know, I'm headed with this idea here. So we are refocusing on the larger spiritual vision. We're not getting lost on the details. I said I was going to move countries until March. I wanted to be married until 29 years old, or I wanted to have a book before I launch a workshop, or, you know, not really getting stuck on the details, but refocusing on the larger spiritual vision of it, which is growth, learning something, you know, developing self-worth through some of the challenging relationships that we're encountering, or learning to be courageous, launching something without necessarily the book coming up, and, you know, and so on and so forth. So we're learning to relax by focusing on that larger picture, on that spiritual vision, and letting go of that tight grip on how we think things should go. Relax a little bit, right? Nurture the spiritual feeling of oneness. Nurture that sense of massive interconnection and harmony and trust that feeling, right? Nurture that feeling. Do those spiritual practices, the dancing, the singing, the painting, all the things that help you transcend and align yourself with those currents, right? Remember, is the moon card is really about getting in tune with that mysterious realm of life. Yeah. And how do we do that? By doing these creative activities, by doing these activities that put us in a moment, that really does put us in a moment. Yeah, rather than in our heads. Okay, so there's also a need for solitude and introspection there. I think that has something in common between the card and the moon of the moon and the hermit as well. They're quite introspective cards. And I don't think that the sign of Virgo is particularly extroverted. But I do think that what she means here by the need for solitude and introspection is to connect with that spiritual layer of existence, of life, right? Praying, the communion with the divine, the connection and the relationship that we need to nurture with that other realm. Because if you don't nurture, it doesn't grow. It's always there somewhere, but we don't really nurture it, right? We don't think about it. Whereas the solitude and introspection of Virgo, I really feel is more about self-reflection, so I can serve better. There's always a need to serve and a need to be practical and a need to be doing something out there in the world, right? The introspection that she means here is more about communion with the divine. Yeah, getting in touch. I always say to my clients as well, when we have a lot of 12 house placements or a strong Neptune in the chart, we need a lot of quality time alone. We need to have that connection, that bond, right? With ourselves and with the other realms. Okay, so I elected two healing affirmations. So get into healing affirmations of the North Node in Pisces. So the first one, I love healing affirmations, by the way. I do it a lot. I've shared many of them in my course, in my academies, in my masterclasses. Have I? I don't know if I don't do in a masterclass, but definitely in the academies, because they have helped me a lot in my journey. So I really recommend, if you have this nodal position, to take note of these affirmations, put them on a post-it, put them somewhere you can see, on the mirror, right where you brush your teeth, when you're going to bed, when you're waking up as well. So that really goes in your head, in your being, and you really absorb that. So the first healing affirmation is, when I let go and let God, I win. I do love the let go and let God. I have used it myself. In fact, I have used that phrase. I put it on my bedroom, on a wall and stuff, when I was going through multiple transits. But one of these transits was Neptune opposition to my Mercury and to my Sun as well. So I had to let go and let God. So that's a good affirmation for all of us now throughout this transit. The second healing affirmation here is, my survival is not threatened by disorder. Because there is a kind of a connection of survival with, that fear of chaos and that defense mechanism. I'm going to keep myself away from chaos and stuff. So that's another great one. My survival is not threatened by chaos or by disorder. So we can relax within the disorder, which is actually the universe's order. Yeah, everything is in order, even though we can't quite read it in the moment. Everything is happening for a reason. There is a pattern. There is beauty in what's happening. We just don't rationally understand it for a while. So that's something for us to explore this year, and for people that have that in the birth charts to learn throughout life. Yeah. Okay, here comes the past lives bit, which I said was going to be interesting to understand the anxiety and the fear of committing mistakes. So what Jen Spiller said about past lives with the South Node in Virgo is that there were usually people that were connected no, that they were physical healers. So they were doctors, they were nurses, they were, healers of all kinds. So the conditioning is that mistakes could cost lives. People die. So if you make a mistake, people die. That you can't make it. It's a life or death situation. You can't make a mistake. No way. So there is an attachment to doing things flawlessly, to being perfect, to knowing what you're doing, and to show that you know what you're doing, right? So there are rigid standards of behavior as well, that for themselves and for others as well. This is the past life idea with the South Node in Virgo. So that's going to be very, very relevant to people that have that in the birth chart rather than the transit. But when we think about the transit, exploring the past lives here, can inspire us to avoid that kind of behavior, right? Avoid having that rigid standard of behavior, of being Mr. Perfect, Miss Perfect, being judgmental of other people, etc., being stuck in perfection, fault finding that we talked about, yeah? So this life now is a time to claim the rewards of peace and inner contentment for their past life service. So you've served a lot in the past life or past lives. You've been doctors and nurses and working hard to save people's lives, etc. Now this life is about reclaiming peace, being peaceful, being calm, being content. It's not about staying in that place of anxiety and fear, right? It's about reaping rewards from the service that you've provided in past lives. Okay, now analytical tendencies. So we're gonna go into some of these. It's like we're branching out into some of these topics that we kind of talked about already. We sort of brushed through quickly. We're going to talk a little bit more throughout the video now. So analytical tendencies, they were overused in the past, so they're overdeveloped. Now, again, we're thinking about that south node in the birth chart. So people have those characteristics from the past, right? That these qualities were overdeveloped. So it's all about bringing worries about the future, everything that could go wrong and everything that's gonna get out of control and bring chaos and, unwelcome change, etc. So there is a continuous state of anxiety with worst case scenarios. Let's let go of the worst case scenarios. Yeah. Let's be in the moment a little bit more. I'm not saying we shouldn't be rational. I'm not saying we shouldn't ponder on our decisions. That's great. That's healthy. But for this next 18 months, let's try and not get into worst case scenarios thinking. Yeah. Let go of that. Whenever you see yourself going in that direction, take a step back. Take a step back. Take a deep breath. Put, some mantra on or, do something, dance a song that you love, something to counteract that worst case scenario tendency. Mostly those case scenarios are very unlikely to happen because there will be new insights and new actions that we don't know about because we're not there yet. There could be outside intervention, which again, we don't know because we're not there yet. So it's the whole thing of over planning everything and being really rigid with that planning is really about letting go because there's so many other things that can happen in between. So don't worry about it. Right? Don't worry too much about that worst case scenario. And number 3 as well is we need to allow the intuition. So we stop thinking in order to feel the future. When we overthink, when we're going into the worst case scenario tendency, we're shutting down our intuition. We're experiencing the worth of the moon, which is confusion, right? Not seeing things clearly and just being really confused and really anxious and really emotional. Like emotions are really coming up, triggered by our own thoughts about all the things that could go wrong in the future. So it's really not about going there. It's about not clogging the intuition because that clogs the intuition. It's really about strengthening that inner voice and being able to get in touch with that, to really listen to that. The more we listen, the more we quiet our minds, the more we're going to be able to listen. It's like that little voice that's so small and somewhere there becomes louder and louder as we practice. It's like a muscle as well, right? So remember, there is a higher plan. There is a higher plan. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to control everything. Everything is fine. And there is a higher plan and trust it. Having all the answers. That's another one. Again, that really goes with past lives or past tendencies, saving lives, having to know, being doctors, etc. So many lives creating order out of chaos. So there is a tendency to need to have the answer. You don't need anymore. You can be with a mystery. You can be with the unknown. In fact, you're encouraged to be with the unknown a little bit more. So it's more about the intuitive process rather than this analytical, rational process. So release the pressure to know all the answers. I love that. That's something for all of us, not just the South Node in Virgo, but all of us. For the next 18 months, release the pressure. You don't need to know everything. Believe that, trust that there is a higher plan and that things will happen in the way that they need to happen. That new insights will rise when they need to, that new people will enter your life when they need to, etc. Get out of the way by over-worrying and overthinking and trying to have the answers as well prematurely. Yeah. There is also the idea of self-concept as well with that nodal axis. And that comes from a strong tendency to not feel like we have a value apart from our job, our duty, what we provide others with, right? Virgo is very much connected with service, with being useful. It's really difficult for Virgos, for someone that has a strong Virgo, to not have that. But we're learning to define ourselves in a new way, in a different way. It's not about being useful. It's not about being a job, a role of any kind. It's letting go of these roles as well. Letting go. So this life is not about fitting in. It is about the spiritual dimension of life. So again, we're talking about meditation, relaxation techniques. Guided meditations are wonderful as well. I've used them many times as well as doing yoga is your spiritual pursuits as well. Focusing on the intangible a little bit, letting go of that clear, role that we have and overly identifying with it. It's about enriching our lives, right? Because I really do feel that the intangible is very enriching, very enriching, and in particular, very soothing for any mental health issues that we might have. It can be really, really helpful as well. Again, obviously, the issue of perfectionism is another one there. So that whole idea of needing to be perfect and the old script. So it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be ourselves. So those are some of the ideas that are going to be very important, again, for the next 18 months or throughout your life journey, if that's your nodal placement in your birth chart. Planning. Again, we talked about the planning bit, right? That fixation on the plan by losing sight of the bigger vision needs to go, right? We need to keep track of the bigger vision and going with that flow, knowing that we're going down river, we can stir the bird, but going with that flow, right? Don't worry too much about the details of the planning and how it should be like this and not like that, and etc. If anything goes slightly different, or go with it. Ask questions to the universe, to the higher power, to the gods, whatever it is that you believe in. What are they trying to teach you? What are they trying to tell you, to show you? Where are they leading you? So you can gather answers rather than rationally. Yeah. Letting go of the criticism, right? Self-judgment, judgment of others, feeling responsible for everything that goes wrong. That's really important. I think that's very important for highly sensitives as well, because we have that tendency. We feel very responsible for other people's feelings. If something isn't right, if people aren't happy, we're always, I used to be very much like that, sharing a house with people. If one of my housemates wasn't happy, I would immediately think, what did I do? What did I do? Did I not put the bin out? Was I too loud? Was I not loud? What happened there? So letting go of that level of criticism and judgment and self-judgment. And usually the people that judge other people the most harshly, they're really doing 3 times more to themselves. So it's really about improving our relationship with ourselves as well, embracing ourselves more, forgiving ourselves more, and then we can offer that to other people as well, right? Um, Another one here is fixing. That's very much a shadow of Virgo's fixing everything, make everything better, improve everything. Everything could be better. And that goes with the fault finding as well, right? So we talked about before. So it's really about learning to think that all is well, and everything is unfolding as it should. I don't need to fix anyone. It's not my control, my responsibility. There is a higher power, and I trust that higher power. Let go and let God, right? As we talked. So stop worrying, overanalyzing, feeling that's our job to fix everything and everyone. Let go of the fixing for the next 18 months. All right. Obsessiveness as well. Obsessing over problems. We talked about that as well. You know, the worst case scenarios, the compulsive mental patterns. The mind is just overactive, overanalyzing. So for the next 18 months, and for you, obviously, your life journey, for you having that node in your birth chart. But for us that don't have this lunar node in our charts, for the next 18 months, we're going to be replacing this compulsive overthinking with feelings of appreciation. That's the greatest antidote. The greatest antidote to all of that anxiety is really nurturing feelings of appreciation and gratitude, and really being grateful for what we have, for where we're at, for the people in our lives, for, whatever it is, for nature, for, animals, and whatever it is that you want to feel grateful towards, we're grateful for. So allow the negative patterns to disappear without having to understand them. You know, when something doesn't go the way that we want it, we get disappointed, and we analyze and we analyze and we analyze. We're trying to understand it, understand. Just let go. You know, that's a great exercise for this year, learning to let go of the things, not having to fully grasp intellectually and mentally. It's okay. It didn't work. And sometimes things are meant to work. There's something else that we're meant to be doing, right? Learn the lessons, but don't try to overanalyze, over rationalize, and pin down, and, etc. Appreciate the wonder of life. I love that. Appreciate the wonder of life. Cultivate feelings of wonder, of magic, of enchantment, right? That's really, really important. And I could go on and on about enchantment because there's a whole topic that we discussed in university as well, how important enchantment is in society, and that in our society, for Western society, that is, for overly emphasizing the rational, the scientific, we lost touch with enchantment and how that has affected our mental health. So cultivating feelings of wonder for life, flow, going with the flow. What is the flow? Oh, feeling awe, wonder, etc. Really, really important to counteract that sense of obsessiveness. Another one here, letting go of any sense of superiority, being a role model. We don't need to be a role model to anyone. We just need to be ourselves. We just need to be, stop trying to be right, stop, the ego trips, and really relax the need to be perfect, the workaholism as well. I am my work. I am, we're human beings, we're not human doings. So I think that is really important here with the superiority as well and the role model. Just really being overly identified with what we do rather than who we are. So that's really important, mixing what we do with our identity, letting go of that, paying attention to that, and cultivating something deeper within us as well. Here's another thing to let go, a sense of duty and guilt as well. The purpose, the feeling that we're here to create order, just letting go of that a little bit. I think that goes with the fixing as well. Just letting go of the imperfection, becoming part of the flow, letting go of that sense of guilt because we are part of that flow as well. Now, needs, when it comes to needs as well here. some of the needs with this, the North Node in Pisces. So the need for releasing definitions and structure. So fewer self-definitions, leaving rigidity behind, being more in touch with ourselves, right? With the deeper parts of ourselves, listening to the intuition more, knowing where you want to go versus that sense of rigid definition of how to get there. It's like I want to be there, but however, I get there, that's okay. That's fine. I'm open to it. It's the whole going down the river and being with the flow rather than trying to go against the current. Focus on the experience more than definitions of the experience. Just really being there, just really feeling the feelings rather than naming the feelings and analyzing the feelings and explaining the feelings. You get the gist. Accepting change, as we talked about in the beginning as well of the video. So being, the whole idea of being comfortable with routine and predictability and resisting change creates rigidity. Rigidity has to be in a certain way. And, so here comes the let go of control, letting go of the known, welcoming the changes, relaxing, to avoid breaking down with changes as well. Because the more our grip is tight, the more we're breaking down when changes happen. So it's really learning to accept and let go. Don't fight. Go with the flow. You stir the boat, but go with the flow. Welcoming unexpected joy. I love that. Welcoming unexpected joy. Now, for us to welcome unexpected joy, we need to be in the moment. We can't be in our heads. We can't be fault finding, analyzing, and seeing everything that's wrong, worrying about all the worst case scenarios in the future. We can't be overthinking in order to welcome the unexpected joys, right? So that's something that I really love. Perhaps this could be one of the affirmations that we can have in our walls, welcome unexpected joy, and just put it somewhere very visible where you can always see that, you can always have access to it. Trusting universal flow and timing. We talked about that again and again, and that's a really huge one for the North Node in Pisces. So we're always rushing around, trying to make things happen, etc. It's really about slowing down. Slowing down, trusting life's natural unfolding. There isn't a universal flow that it has its timings, and we respect. And not only we respect, we go with it. We relax into it. Yeah. By relaxing, we're going to allow things to unfold in a more positive way. Yeah. That has a lot to do with finding peace as well, which is one of the big things for the North Node in Pisces as well. So a sense of self-purification through solitude, meditation, letting go of all those rigid standards as well. Open up to the higher energies. That's really, really super important. It's about relaxing. It's about finding inner peace. Yeah. That's connected with the self-purification, not a rigid standard of purity. Forget about that. It's really about letting go of that overthinking. Surrender. That's a huge word. That's a huge word for Pisces, for the North Node in Pisces. So surrender is really super important. So spirituality through surrendering, letting go of tension, of control, of overthinking, when things go wrong. Go inward, gain perspective from the distance. The universe plan is better than our own. That's something that we need to think about with that nodal position, right? Then obviously we've got the issue of recharging as well and getting in touch with higher consciousness to recharge. So rest and recharge is super, super important. Retreating into our inner world, relaxing, having those spiritual experiences and practices to help us relax, to help us unwind. Yeah. Doing meaningful work is another one. And meaningful work that's inspirational, that's spiritual as well. So that's something to develop, to focus during this year as well. art, imagination, vision, compassionate service, keeping track of the vision rather than the small details of everything. Again, that idea. So relationships, right? Relationships, another one, big arena here for this nodal connection as well, for this nodal placement. So when it comes to romance, there's a tendency to try and control outcomes. We're talking about control, right? So it appears impersonal. It over-identifies with the role rather than the real person underneath as well, again. So it's really about letting go of that. So in order for romance to work, we need to let go of that need to be perfect. So that's another thing to learn through relationships. Fear of emotions. Virgo is very, very analytical, very rational, is fearful of the emotional. Emotions are chaotic, right? They're chaotic. And that brings a fear of intimacy as well. So then hiding behind work, hiding behind workaholism, yeah? Avoiding emotions, being too analytical rather than vulnerable. We're really learning to be vulnerable here and to feel emotions and to talk about emotions, letting go of structure. That really feels like an ego death, right? And that goes with a lot of what we talked about as well previously with the expectations and the sense of control, the bigger, expectations on everything rather than being there with a higher vision. So it's really staying with the higher vision rather than fault finding, letting go of the rigid plans, letting go of the criticism and the judgment as well. That's really helpful in relationships as well. Learning unconditional love, learning how to accept others more, how to feel compassion more. That's a real important dimension of this nodal placement as well. And obviously, letting go of the compulsion to fix. We don't need to fix anyone. So rather than fixing and taking responsibility for everything to work perfectly, we will provide comfort. We will provide support, compassion, so people can surrender as well, and we can surrender in the relationship, in the exchange, right? And that can be a place for growth. The growth of the relationship, the growth of the two individuals together. Yeah. So letting go, I think, is a really huge one. Letting go, having a higher resolution on a spiritual level, right? So human empathy, letting go of those super rigid plans and those big sort of ideas, and just really having and making a spiritual resolution as well throughout this year. Now, that's a super, super important one as well, is living consciously. That's super important to achieve the goals or the opportunities, the best opportunities of the North Node in Pisces is really living consciously, is cultivating consciousness. Yeah. So conscious of how we truly feel, that we might be entrapped in roles that we play, and being aware of that, perceiving that, knowing that, remaining in touch with the bigger picture, with the bigger vision, following our intuition as well, right? And all of those things can be done with spiritual practices. Again, we go back to the creativity, imagination, playing music, meditation, and having quality solitude so we can live consciously, right? Facing the unknown and the chaos. That's something that's going to be super important. That's going to be part of the goals for this North Node in Pisces period, and obviously for you as a life journey if you have that in your birth chart. So facing the unknown, letting go of being used to organize everything, to organization and form, let go of that. Be open to the unknown, that is scary. There are no roses, no clarity, but it is about surrendering. That's where the growth is. That's where the growth is going to be, right? surrendering to a higher power, to a higher intelligence. Clarity will only come through that way. It's not through overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to control, blah, blah, blah. It's really through surrendering that clarity can come, right? The willingness to trust in a positive higher power that's going to bring us clarity. That's going to bring us a sense of fulfillment this year. And the bigger opportunities for growth are going to be there, are going to be there. So there is order in the universe. Don't forget that. That's another mantra for this year. There is order in the universe. And I trust that order, right? Letting go of the structure and routines and allowing non-linear existence a little bit, right? I think that comes with being more conscious, living more consciously, accessing and checking in with yourself from moment to moment, rather than a mental picture of what you should do, how you should behave, where you should be at. This is super important, in fact, the non-linear existence. It's really about living from moment to moment, checking in, being aware, seeing how we feel, touching our bellies and, and assessing that. Obviously, that's all connected with meditation, with the self-observation, and having me time, which is super important. Letting go of the shadows of having to be of service, of having to be useful, of having to have control, having to have a structure, all of that. So non-linear existence, I love that. Is consciousness from moment to moment. Baby steps, from moment to moment. And ultimately, this whole period of time, ultimately, is going to be a lot about finding a spiritual path, getting in touch with a higher power, developing the gift of psychic intuition, and people that have that in their birth chart have a really powerful psychic ability there and, intuition as well. So it's really about finding that spiritual path to release the overemphasis on the tangible and to learn how to go with the flow. So finding the spiritual path will be super important and developing inner peace as well, as I said. Trust is a key word for this year as well. Trust in the flow, trust in the universe, losing the fear of change, letting go of any self-imposed ideals. That's the challenge for this year. That's the lesson. That's the opportunity, Look for the good. Let go of the anxiety. That's the exercise. For the next 18 months, look for the good. Look for the good. Go with that flow. Trust. Having a sense of a vision as well is super important in reclaiming that spiritual path as well. So focusing on simplicity rather than overcomplicating things, again, overthinking, overanalyzing, overrationalizing, overcomplicating. It's really about simplicity. Slow down, be fluid, simplify your life. Compassion, obviously, as we've mentioned a few times in the video. Learn acceptance, learn compassion, stop comparing yourself to other people. That just came to me as well right now. I think it triggers a lot of anxiety when we're comparing other people or somewhere else or have something that we don't have or, stop comparing. Suspend the judgment, the criticism of ourselves and other people as well. Relax. We are imperfect. And imperfections are going to help us to be more humble as well this year. The awareness of the imperfections, right? It's all about developing, cultivating, I like the word cultivating, a higher state of consciousness. Yeah. Gratitude and bliss. So maintaining inner peace and having that awareness of the universe. So that's a phrase from Jem Spiller as well. The universe loves me and somehow this will work out to my advantage. That's another mantra. That's another phrase that can be used, that can be written and placed on a wall, throughout this year. Embrace the change, go with the flow, and the universe loves you. The universe loves you, and somehow this will work out to your advantage. Yeah. So gratitude as well, another word on gratitude here, and it's really, really coming to an end here. It's a long prep that I've done, like I've mentioned to you before, but gratitude will keep us spiritually open with less resistance. The whole idea of the let go and let God. So being the spiritual experience to the planet, bring the spiritual experience to the planet, bring that sense of quiet joy through gratitude. So that's another thing that we can focus a lot in the next 18 months is gratitude lists, is really practicing that, is really bringing that, to fruition as a practice every day. So that's it. This is a super long video, super comprehensive. I hope that's been helpful for you who has this nodal position in your birth chart, or for you welcoming this transit as well. And let's make the most of it. Let's go with the flow, trust, increase our spiritual, focus, develop our intuitions, our spiritual practices, and really embrace a sense of inner peace and inner contentment. I think those are some of the best things to look forward with this North Node in Pisces now. So that's it. Let me know in the comments, what are your natal lunar nodes? What are you looking forward to in this, during this transit? What house are they going to be in your birth chart, and etc. Anything that you'd like to share. And I'll be back with another video with, Fridays, transits Fridays. And I keep switching the name of my own videos. And I'll see you soon. So take care. Lots of love, and I'll see you soon.